Well, hello everybody. Wow, that even sounds loud from up here. First, we're going to just check and make sure that everybody's in the right session. You're here to talk about digital sovereignty and how you get more control and more choice without compromise, right? Excellent. My name's Max Peterson. I'm our Vice President of Sovereign Cloud at AWS. My responsibility is to make sure that our customers around the world have the most advanced set of sovereignty controls, the best privacy safeguards, and the proper security features all available in the cloud. Before stepping into this role, I ran our worldwide public sector business, so I've had a lot of experience and opportunity to work with our customers who are in some of the most highly regulated industries and in the public sector, things like government, healthcare, and many other areas where these requirements are simply paramount. So I'm actually really excited to be back here in Berlin. When I was in my old role, I was at the Berlin Summit and got the chance to talk to folks here, customers and everybody years and years and years at a time. So it's exciting to be back here. But today what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the changing dynamics in this area of digital sovereignty that our partners and our customers are facing, and then talk about how our approach to meeting these by going through control and our sovereign by design strategy, by talking about the ability to deliver the same capability that you have today in AWS commercial regions around the world, and still leverage the types of controls you need to deliver digital sovereignty. And then finally, we'll wrap up on the next steps and the things that you can do to continue to build and innovate on the cloud and also address these compliance or risk management schemes that are evolving and that we're seeing. Before diving in, though, I thought I'd do a quick recap of our long-term investment in Europe and in Europe's digital future. We are continuing to drive investments in infrastructure, in job creation, skills development, education in local communities. Since 2010, we've invested a total of 215 billion euros in Europe, and we're proud to employ more than 220,000 people here in 60 different corporate offices, 25 different research and development centers, and a quick highlight for a little bit later in the presentation, we're continuing to grow and expand. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the growth and expansion that we've got planned with the European Sovereign Cloud, so stay tuned. And we do all this because of all the organizations that run on AWS and the missions that we support. And our focus on digital sovereignty really has been honed by working with customers and partners and regulators and cybersecurity experts as we look to bring all of these things together and then take on the responsibility to deliver features for you so that you all can focus on innovation and mission, and we'll help get over the hard barriers on security and compliance. So let's start the discussion by talking about what does digital sovereignty mean. Does anybody here have a definition that you think covers the landscape? Talk to me afterwards if you do, because here's the real state of play with digital sovereignty. It means something different to everybody. By its nature, it's going to be driven by requirements in an individual country, although we try and look for standards that go across the globe. But digital sovereignty really means something to everybody else. So we started by trying to deeply understand what that means, and we distilled them down to these 4 different things. And so what we hear most often is that digital sovereignty translates to data protection, data security, data location, data residency, basically the end-to-end ability to have control over my data. The second most common thing that we hear is, how do you make sure that I'm able to very tightly control any kind of operator access so that I know exactly who's allowed to use systems and they're authorized? The third thing that we hear, this is hugely important, particularly in today's world, is resilience and survivability. Folks used to think of that in terms of like sort of simple state DR. But really at a sovereign level, you need to have a strategy that allows you to back up and operate, frankly, from anywhere in the world so that you're away from a disaster or from a foreign interference or a conflict like has been experienced in Ukraine. And then finally, the last one is really to deliver on these requirements, you need independence and transparency. Whoops, I think I got out of order on my slides. Let's see, I believe we covered all of these. And so let me move on to the control without compromise point. From day one, the way that AWS built the cloud was with a strong focus on customer control, which is one of the major things that translates to sovereignty. It's been a priority from day one. For example, we're the only major cloud provider to give customers the full choice over the location and movement of their data. And we continue to work closely with customers and partners and regulators so that we understand how these needs evolve and so that we can help you meet them. I'm going to run through the things that are part of the technical controls and the operational measures and the contract protections that allow customers to achieve sovereignty on the cloud. Also, to provide the sort of assurance and transparency about how these services operate. We continue to seek out and obtain attestations or certifications from third parties so that customers can rely upon the material we provide, but then you get third-party assurances that these products meet the compliance schemes that customers have. I also want to just point out to you that security is essential. It's foundational to delivering sovereignty. And at AWS, security has been a top priority since day one. There simply is no sovereignty without foundational security. And AWS has the most proven experience around the world of any cloud provider. And our customers benefit from the cloud and the network architecture that's built to be able to meet the requirements of the most security-sensitive organizations in the world, organizations like financial services or governments or national healthcare providers. Resilience was another one of the requirements that we hear from customers on sovereignty. And on the AWS Global Commercial Cloud, there's currently 33 global cloud regions that are made up of clusters of data centers that we call availability zones. There's 105 of these availability zones. They're all isolated in a way that provides very high availability, exceptional redundancy, and high resilience. And we haven't stopped there. We've announced 6 further AWS regions that are being built around the world. They're going to add another 18 availability zones. And customers have the ability to use AWS services anywhere in the world and leverage this substantial infrastructure investment so that they make sure that they can operate as cost efficiently as possible, as close to their customer requirements or business requirements to provide the best performance, that they can operate and deploy in minutes anywhere around the world, and so that they can achieve the same sort of security profile uniformly across all regions in the cloud. Beyond the infrastructure resilience, we also spend a lot of time architecting the AWS services so that they are built for independence and autonomy. And so many of our services are all built to run regionally, right in the AWS regions you're operating in. There are some services that, in fact, are global services because of the role that they play. An example is being able to log on to any region around the world requires a common identity and access management system on the global cloud. Or customers want to get a single bill, so it requires a global billing system. But we're transparent in the way that we describe all these capabilities so that customers on an industry-by-industry basis or on a country-by-country basis can select the right services transparently and easily to be able to build on the cloud. We also talked about how resilience is a key pillar of digital sovereignty and how customers need to know that their workloads can continue to operate in the cloud despite natural disasters or network disruptions or geopolitical influences. And this has been another sovereign by design criteria for AWS since day one. It's designed to allow customers to achieve the highest level of reliability. And if you look at global sources of service disruptions and you run the calculations, you'll see that AWS delivers the highest availability of any cloud service provider. Of course, this is because of the region architecture, where we mentioned just before that a region is not a single system. A region is multiple availability zones, and in fact, in those multiple availability zones, there's going to be multiple data centers. The region right here in Germany, in Frankfurt, is exceptionally large in that respect. As we started watching, the different sort of regulatory schemes and compliance schemes and risk management frameworks evolve, we recognized back in 2022 that this was an area where our customers needed us to step in and innovate on their behalf and take on some of these regulatory requirements. Because as we talked to customers, their concern was that if we didn't help them to address these emerging requirements, they may be forced to use less full-featured, less capable, localized cloud solutions, and that would in fact, fragment their operations, increase their costs, and complicate their approach to global security. So this is when we made the AWS Digital Sovereignty Pledge, and quite simply, that was our commitment to continue to evolve the AWS cloud and continue to deliver new services and sovereign infrastructure so that we could help customers meet all of these evolving requirements. Quite fortunately, I got the responsibility for leading that effort here. So it's certainly something that I'm excited about, and I hope I can help every one of you here. At the bottom line is we're trying to give customers the choice that they need to make the decisions for their mission or for their business to run on the cloud wherever it is they can meet their customers' requirements. So it's, as we said before, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. And so I'm going to run you through now some of the different ways that we're building sovereign solutions to give you all the choice and the control and not make you compromise. This is a quick timeline since launching the Digital Sovereignty Pledge of things that we've done. I'll just point out a couple of key ones. The external key store, we think that's a key technology for different sovereignty and compliance requirements. In May, we took one of our key technology pieces and we had it assessed by a third-party assessor so they could provide a judgment that the Nitro system provides the protections that customers need. We innovated with some customers around around dedicated local zones, the government of Singapore. And then most recently, we announced the European Sovereign Cloud. So let me dive into some of those for you because I think this is really important as you think about how you're going to build your business and scale your systems on the cloud. First of all, to help ensure the confidentiality and integrity of customer data, all of our regions are powered by the AWS Nitro system. This has been a project that we've worked on for over a decade, and we've been reinventing how virtualization works on AWS EC2 instances by moving more and more features of virtualization, off of the instance and into dedicated hardware and firmware. And that's the result of that is the Nitro system, which provides an exceptionally strong boundary in terms of physical and logical security. And it's designed to enforce the restrictions so that nobody, not even AWS, can access customer workloads running on EC2. And this in particular is where we went to a third party and asked them to do an independent assessment. This is the NCC Group, which is a cybersecurity consulting firm in Europe. And then what we did, and this is an example of a technical measure that we have assessed, and then we converted it into a contract protection. And so now every single one of our customers or partners, in their contract, it specifically says that AWS has no access, no technical means, no APIs available to be able to read, copy, extract, modify, or otherwise access your data on an EC2 instance. So we've taken those technical measures and we've built them into strong contract protections. And that's the pattern, again, that you'll see as we think about this: technical measures, operational controls, contract and legal protections. This is another way that we're helping customers not have to do the heavy lifting associated with compliance. We have a solution called AWS Control Tower, and Control Tower has 245 plus sovereignty controls. So this allows you to establish organization-wide types of guardrails that are essential for delivering compliance with sovereignty and other risk mitigation schemes. I'll just highlight one function that was released at reInvent this year, which is called Region Deny. And customers have always had control of their data, and they've always had the ability to restrict where users or developers build or run applications and build and run storage. But customers told us it was too hard. And so this is where this function called Region Deny came from, so that you can simply issue this configuration control at the top level of an organization. And it says, I want everything to only happen in Frankfurt, as an example. And then that cascades all the way through all of the usage, all of the development, all of the operators. So a simple, easy button. And that's how we're trying to think for customers about how we deliver compliance and control without compromise. And in fact, what we always are looking for is customer feedback and customer adoption. So it's wonderful to hear, and see customers who are taking advantage of these controls to simplify their ability to meet requirements. Another way that we prevent access, to customers' data is through your ability to use encryption everywhere across the AWS cloud. And so we've always recommended to customers that they use the strong encryption that's available to them and built into AWS, and those customer keys are not accessible to AWS personnel. In some cases, right, customers continue to want to have more operational control over how encryption works, and so we offered a solution called Cloud HSM, where it's a hardware module. It's managed by AWS as part of the cloud, but where AWS operators don't have access to that, only customers have access to that. They manage their encryption, and the whole point of that is encrypted data is unusable without the appropriate decryption keys. And this can be managed both in transit and at rest. And importantly, it meets standards like the NIST 140-2 security level 3 validation. Again, another independently developed and assessed capability that's incorporated in the AWS cloud. But it didn't stop there. We kept hearing from customers that some of them not only wanted encryption throughout their use of the cloud, but they wanted to actually separate responsibilities, and they wanted to take control of those key stores. In some risk management frameworks, having that separation of responsibilities is another important structure to deliver on sovereignty requirements. So external key store allows customers or partners to control independently that key management process, gives them the ability to manage all their encryption and decryption with their own cryptographic keys, independent authorization. You can set up additional audit or key management processes outside of AWS. And obviously in this, there's absolutely no way that AWS has the keys. And so this is a further way that in some of these frameworks, it helps address sovereignty. And excitingly, because encryption, as many of you know, right, losing your encryption keys is a bad day at work. And so third parties, very experienced third parties, have stepped in to provide AWS external key management stores. Companies like T-Systems or Talus or Salesforce or Atos or a number of other ones. And so I think this is another great example of how it takes an ecosystem in many cases to meet the requirements that are evolving in the area of digital sovereignty. The other thing that we hear from customers is that they want to be able to have a common set of services and a common approach to architecture and execution, irrespective of where their workload needs to run. And so another key focus for us is making sure that we can deliver the hybrid solutions from the cloud regions through to solutions like telco solutions with wavelength, through to sovereign infrastructure solutions like the AWS dedicated local zone, which is deployed in customer premise and managed remotely, or things like outposts, and then all the way out to the edge with items like Snowball devices. And importantly, not only do you get the consistency of services, you get the consistency of security execution. This one is a particularly important story to me because I got the opportunity to be directly involved with this. We had been talking to the government of Ukraine for a long time about digital modernization. As the pending Russian invasion was on the doorsteps, the Ukrainian parliament actually stepped in and changed the law to permit the government to store data on the cloud. They had previously had an old law that said all government data had to go into government data centers. And it was incredibly unfortunate that they stepped in and provided that, because pretty much about 5 days later, about a week later, AWS was in there helping them with these devices, cloud storage devices and computing devices called AWS Snowballs, so that they could quickly migrate all of their workloads and their data off, some 15 petabytes of data, and work from over 40 different government authorities, schools and universities, and then dozens of other private sector companies joined that, including Privet Bank, and I'm going to have one of our customers from Privet Bank on video in just a second here. All of this was accomplished and out of the country and back up on the cloud. 72 hours later, the government central data center was in fact hit by a missile and destroyed. This is a quote from the digital minister Fedorov. AWS literally saved our digital infrastructure. Privet Bank that I talked about, one of the commercial organizations, they actually did the banking services for about 40% of all of the customers, citizens and businesses. And so they were just as essential to the continuity of the country's operations as government services were. They had already been using AWS for a while, so they were able to kind of quickly move off about 270 applications, 4 petabytes of client data that was spread across an estate of about 3,500 servers, and then move them into the cloud. And they were able to provide seamless access to individuals' financial and banking assets. And here's a quick video in the customer's own words.
Privatbank is the largest financial institution in Ukraine. Since 2016, nationalized, so fully owned by the state. Before that, 31 years of history on the market. Primarily, we are the retail bank with over 20 million retail customers served. We also have a solid SME business, so small and medium enterprise, supporting them. We are serving up to 50% market share in terms of the payments. Nobody expected the war. So actually, as anyone who was living in there, the same was happening to us and our employees and our branches and our system. So we were confronted with the fact that actually we had the bombs coming from different angles and actually Russian troops entering the country. So we had to make sure whatever is possible to protect our people and our employees so they are safe and secure. We also had to actually make sure that our services are available for our clients. When you are having a panic and actually you would not withdraw the cash, you have to make sure that the cash is in ATMs, that the branches are operating, and actually there's enough cash in the system. So our role to, whenever it was possible, to make sure that all the services, electronic way as well in the cash, are available for our population. We had to focus on making sure that the critical infrastructure, core banking services and core banking systems are secured. So we decided at that time to migrate to the Amazon. After the positive decision of the regulator, National Bank of Ukraine, we actually started the process beginning of March. We had 2 data centers on premise. The war started, Russians around. We decided to work with Amazon. Amazon was actually the primary partner of us, helping us to move whatever we had on the premise. First, we started with the critical services and infrastructure components. So within the first 2 months, we actually migrated all the applications, all the critical services, and we started to operate with the Amazon cloud. It was one of the fastest migrations ever happened. So actually, you can imagine the effort sitting on our side, and also on the effort on actually and flexibility on the Amazon side. And luckily, in that short period of time, we were able to preserve and protect our business. So actually, without much of the interruptions during the migration. With the support of Amazon colleagues and the infrastructure, we simply packed everything what was possible and we placed it in the Amazon. So that was an achievement. Happily, it didn't impact the business operations. So clients were happy, the owner was happy, so the shareholder, that we didn't actually stop the operating. And the clients, as the people who were dealing with that, I think we were having a great success story behind.
It's always inspiring to me when I hear a customer who talks about that kind of power and capability, and more importantly, the impact that it had on citizens around the country, being able to continue to take care of their financial resources and continue their banking and their business despite the horrible invasion. Another example of how customers are leveraging the AWS cloud to be able to prioritize data protection includes AXA, Germany, which is a global insurer that provides wealth management and delivers these services to over 90 million customers in more than 50 countries. So you can imagine for them, right, the effort to try and comply with all these different regulations across that broad of a spectrum is difficult. That's part of the reason why AWS made that digital sovereignty pledge, and AXA was able to leverage their digital transformation by a move to the cloud program that helped them to accelerate innovation and prioritize data protection and continuity. They leveraged the AWS cloud in order to be able to also comply with the complex and changing security requirements that applied within this heavily regulated industry, which included the German Federal Financial Supervisory Authority and the German IT Security Act and the EU General Data Protection Act, to name a few. But that's the sort of thing that customers want around the world, is the ability to count on AWS to deliver on these different compliance schemes on their behalf. Here's an example of how we continued to deliver new approaches for customers on the AWS cloud. It's called the AWS Dedicated Local Zones. It was on the timeline. We just announced it in August of 2003. And this type of infrastructure is built by AWS for the exclusive use of a customer or a community, and then placed in a customer-specified location or a data center to help them comply with data localization and data management requirements, typically for running more sensitive information. So they want this inside their data centers, protected by their physical security. Deploying dedicated local zones helped the government of Singapore, who was already quite familiar with the cloud, had already moved a lot of their government programs to the cloud. It allowed them to continue this by providing a new solution that had common AWS services, but recognized their need for specific isolation and multi-tenancy and specific security requirements to be able to support their continued innovation around their Smart Nation program. And then one of the most exciting things for me, at least, is that in October of this year, we just announced the plans to deliver the AWS European Sovereign Cloud, which expands choices that our customers have to meet varying data residency, operational autonomy, and resiliency requirements. This is a new independent cloud region that's located and operated entirely within the European Union. It'll have the exact same security, the same availability, the same performance that customers get out of any other AWS region around the world, but it has these additional important features that are essential for specific EU regulations that are evolving and for industry regulations that are evolving. The European Sovereign Cloud is sovereign by design. It's built on more than a decade of experience that AWS has running other independent, isolated regions around the world. And so I'm going to quickly dive into that and share some exciting new announcements for those of you that are ready to get going and starting to build. The initial region is located in Germany. It'll launch with multiple availability zones, each in a separate and distinct geographic location to be able to reduce the possibility of any kind of a single event impacting. Like all of our regions, the AWS European Sovereign Cloud will be powered by the Nitro system that we talked about. This helps to ensure the confidentiality and the integrity of your data. As an independent cloud, it'll also be built with separate identity and access management systems, separate in-region billing, and separate in-region usage and metering systems and monitoring systems. And over time, this region and other regions around the cloud are going to be able to function as parent regions for some of the other solutions that you saw at the edge of the network. So the European Sovereign Cloud could function as the parent region for outposts that you deploy further into data centers, or it could serve as the parent region for dedicated local zones. Again, giving customers more choice in how they build and architect to meet varying national or regional standards. To ensure the independent operation of the European Sovereign Cloud, the day-to-day operations, the technical support, and the customer support is going to be delivered entirely from EU locations by EU residents who are all subject to EU law. This includes the full operation of the data centers, the operation of the services, and the provision of all technical support. And one of the reasons why this is important is because this gives customers who have perhaps a heightened sense of privacy protection. Maybe the Data Protection Authority kind of goes above and beyond the bar of the EU-US privacy framework. This region will allow you to meet all of those GDPR compliance requirements inherently because the data and all of the metadata is going to stay in the region, and all the technical support stays in the region, so there's no transfer of any data. Like I said before, customers have always had control of their customer data. This now gives you additional control over customer-created metadata, things like roles or permissions, resource labels, and configurations. And we think this delivers customers an important additional capability to be able to meet those requirements that get handed down by DPAs around the EU. And so this is the exciting part. Today, I get to talk about the timing and the scale at which we're going to deliver the European Sovereign Cloud. And so customers and partners kept asking me, great, Max, but when is it going to be available? I can now tell you that it'll be available by the end of next year. So you need to get building now because that's only a quick year and a half away. This is a substantial investment. It represents an AWS total investment of $7.8 billion over the course of a 15-year period. That's an investment in the infrastructure, jobs creation. It's a commitment to skilling and development, and it builds on that same long-term support and investment that we have in Europe to be able to help drive innovation. Compliance is critical, but at time and again, what our customers tell us is they want to be able to innovate, they want to be able to move fast, they want to be able to deliver at scale, they want to reuse skills, they don't want some feature-limited localized cloud service. They want a full hyperscale cloud region that has these additional protections. And I'm excited to also be able to share updates along the way. And if you want to hear the state of Brandenburg's story, come and join me at 1:45. We're going to have a little fireside chat with the Minister of Economy. And so you'll get to hear kind of the inside story here on the AWS investment to build the European sovereign cloud, which you can obviously tell I'm excited about. I hope you are too. So come on over if you want to hear that story. One of the things that customers also look for is they look for third-party consultants to help guide them in their selection of the best solutions for sovereign cloud. And in January of this year, AWS was honored to be able to be placed in the top position from a consultancy called ISG. And they defined the AWS characteristics of having the highest sovereign cloud portfolio attractiveness. It contained multiple different factors. You can go to our website and get access to the full report. This is an important thing that you should consider when you're trying to chart your path to achieving digital sovereignty. It's also really essential that, as I said, it takes a community to deliver. And we're excited about the number of AWS partners that have seen their customers ask for different types of digital sovereignty solutions, and they're investing in these same capabilities to deliver the tools and the controls that customers need. And so as I wrap up here, I want to just summarize for you that from the AWS Digital Sovereignty Pledge 2 years ago through today, when I got to share with you the size of the investment that we're making in the European sovereign cloud, I hope you have the sense now of the level of commitment that we have to delivering on customer sovereignty requirements across the world. We're committed to deliver the features that you need to be able to go faster and build innovative solutions. Working with our partners, I just can't wait to see what everybody here is able to build and create. And so let's start building. You can have the confidence in building on AWS. Here's a couple of next steps. There's a lot of AWS people around. Connect with them, get more details that you need. Pull out your cell phone here and take a snapshot of that QR code. That's a place where we'll have a repository, and we continue to update it so you get the most updated information. I think the QR code is more usable. This gives you the English names, but you're not going to click on those links very easily. So finally, we're excited for you to be here at the summit. I hope you get an opportunity to enjoy the networking, enjoy the additional training classes, check out Skills Builder. There's over 600 free digital resources there, including how to help you build with control and digital sovereignty in mind. They offer subscriptions as well for your enterprise organizations. So thanks again for joining us here today. I hope this was useful and informative to you. We look forward to your feedback. Enjoy the great weather and the rest of the day. Thanks, everybody.